Auckland decided to burn down while I'm fucking doing my podcast. Hello and welcome to the Go Grab That Day podcast, episode number 600. Today we're going to talk about shocker fights, UFC 255. There are a lot of fights to get through, so I'm going to start pretty quick. Hope everyone's okay, all good on this side of the world and that. As I always say, keep liking, sharing, all that kind of stuff. Finally we got our move done, moved to a new place, so apologies for the delay in the video last week. It's just impossible to get around to it, but things will be done on time and a lot quicker, and we will have a set day pretty soon to where they come out every week. It's just trying to organise schedules and stuff like that. And I've said a million times, but I mean it, that there will be more content coming out. I will have a lot more stuff, more fun videos, not just always the fight stuff. But I started from this week, I'll be working on them kind of things and hopefully make the page even a bit more fun for you guys. Anyway, getting into the fights. Start off by saying one thing that I made a mistake on last week. Jared, in the early prelims of UFC 255, there was 3 fights, only one really I'm going to talk about. It was the Alan Joban and Jared Gooden fight. And I made a mistake saying it was Jared Gordon, kind of because of the UFC page. They didn't show his picture and they had spelled a couple of other names wrong, so I figured they'd made a mistake there, but I figured it was Jared Gordon. But no, it wasn't, it was Jared Gooden, so mistake there. But anyway, on to the fights. Alan Joban returned to the UFC with a good win, decision win over Jared Gooden. Not the most amazing fight, but I like Alan Joban. He's usually a pretty entertaining guy. He's got some good striking, so makes for fun fights. This wasn't the greatest fight, but good for him to get a win on the return. I don't know how long exactly he's been out, but he's been out at least, I think it's been a year or more since we last saw him fight, but good result for him in the welterweight division. That's all I'm going to talk about on the early prelims, but moving on to preliminary card. All in all, there was a nice setup on this card. There was a lot of good fights. Opening the prelims was Nicholas Dalby versus Daniel Rodriguez. Not a bad fight again. Good win for Nicholas Dalby with his nice karate stance he was showing throughout that fight, but it was a good win. Not the most exciting fight, but it's a good win for Dalby. Usually a pretty entertaining fighter to watch too. Then moving on to women's flyweight, with another mistake I made. I kept calling Antonina Shevchenko the younger of the two sisters, which I thought she was, but no, she's actually the older. But she fought Ariana Lipski, and a very good win for her. Showed a lot of grappling, which is new to her game, considering she's like her sister, very high level stand up fighter. But showed really good grappling, and ended up winning via TKO in round 2. But yeah, that's a really good result, because Ariana Lipski is not an easy fight for anybody. It's a very good result for her, and it's shown that the Shevchenko sisters are really showing they have a lot more to their game than just striking. Especially Antonina, who obviously doesn't look as talented as her sister, but is improving as she goes, definitely. So very good result for her, good win for her, big win. And then moving on to Joaquin Buckley versus Jordan Wright. This is a good fight. Buckley, again, who I think I'd said last week, is the guy who has the knockout probably of the last decade. But there was a month or so ago, the back spinning kick, jumping back spinning kick, which has gone pretty viral. I think everyone has seen it at this stage. Fighting Jordan Wright. Jordan Wright is a good fighter, and I had said there's a lot of pressure on Buckley, because for a lot of people who don't watch the sport a lot, you're going to have heard of him, or you're going to have seen his knockout, and he was a heavy favourite going into the fight, because mostly because of that knockout. So there's a lot of hype built around him, pressure on him, and he went out and did it again with a knockout in round 2, and a pretty big statement knockout again. Not as exciting as his last one, which is impossible to do, to be fair. But I mean, he's really building a name for himself and fast. So that's another good win. It was a heavy-handed knockout, and throughout that whole fight, albeit it only went 2 rounds, but he was swinging heavy hands, and you're kind of waiting for a guy who's as big as him and as muscular as him. You're waiting for him to get tired, but he didn't show it in any way throughout that fight. So his cardio seems to be able to hold up with his stature. But we'll see as it goes. He's probably going to get a big name next, or a known name. There's a lot of shit over and back between him and James Krause. James Krause, who's natural welterweight but has fought at middleweight. Seems to be a lot of bad blood between the two of them, going back and forth. James Krause came out and said a lot of things recently about how he was kicked out of a lot of gyms, and basically how Buckley is a hated guy around where they're from. I don't know exactly where they're from, but yeah, back and forth. So that probably be a fight that the UFC will make. Dana White has come out and said that if both guys want it, of course they're going to make it, which makes sense, to be fair. Interesting fight too. Krause is very experienced. I think he has a lot more tools than what Buckley has, but Buckley is very heavy-handed and very powerful, so I'd like to see that. But Buckley quickly and surely making a name for himself. So yeah, another good win for him. And then moving on to the main fight of the prelims, which this fight probably should have been on the main card really, but and I did peg it for the best, not the best, one of the best fights of the night, and I wasn't wrong for once, even though it only went 1 round. Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval, battle of the Brandons. But good fight for as long as it lasted. It was really back and forth. The high pace the two of them set is brilliant. It's a class to watch, and the ground game is brilliant. Moreno's kind of a more, more technical, and then Royval is a bit more wild, but with very good jiu-jitsu as well, very offensive. But yeah, really good fight. Anyone that hasn't seen it, it kind of finished with a TKO. Yeah, it was a TKO, down as a TKO, but Royval popped his shoulder just a couple of moments before that. It's kind of hard to see where it happens. It's in a grappling exchange, and you see him kind of go down on his shoulder, but then Moreno starts to land strikes, and Moreno won the fight. It wasn't like wasn't down through the shoulder. Moreno won. He got himself in a good position and finished the fight. But I've never seen it. The only other times I can remember this happening, I did see the fight a few weeks ago. I can't remember the guy's name. He was a new guy that hurt his neck. If you've seen the podcast, you've heard me talking about that. But in this fight, Royval was pretty much screaming in pain after the fight was stopped, and you could see the camera didn't fully focus on him because they were picking up Moreno's celebrations, but Royval, his legs were kicking and everything. He was in so much pain, really hard to pick up what it was, and you could hear him, even as they focused on Moreno, you could hear him screaming in the background. No surprise when someone pops their shoulder, but it was horrible to hear that. And then his coach came in and on camera popped the shoulder back into place, and you can see the immediate relief. But it looks like it's something that has happened previously, because straight away it's like he knew what it was. It's like the coach knew what it was. His coach, Mark Montoya, I believe, he popped it back into place. But in the slow replay you can see the shoulder out. It's disgusting, but it's quite hard to see where it actually happens, because especially in flyweight, they're so fast the way they move, they're so explosive that it's hard to pick these things up, and especially in the grappling, because they were over and back, both offensive, both aggressive. You do see at one point his shoulders it's almost like he's trying to pop it in as he's being hit, which is crazy. It tells you how much the pain was affecting him. But delighted to see Moreno win, because I do think he's the next man to challenge Figueiredo. I think he's a really good fighter. Whether he's good enough to beat Figueiredo, I don't know. But Royval as well is another. I think those guys are doing a lot to kind of Royval, Moreno, Figueiredo, and even Perez, who we'll talk about later. those guys are going to help that division, because it is a division that has struggled a lot lately. Flyweight, because they're smaller guys, unfortunately their names are never going to be as big. Think of Mighty Mouse Johnson, who was arguably the GOAT, or one of the GOATs. The UFC, the fucking full farm of GOATs now at this rate. But he's a guy who was brilliant, but a lot of people don't know him. Even now they don't know who he is. Especially if you're a casual fan, you're not someone who watches the sport all the time. And even me, who's a huge fan, and I do like the flyweight division, I like Mighty Mouse, but wouldn't be one of my favourites to watch. But unfortunately, it's just that's the way of the flyweight division, because they're smaller guys, you don't see knockouts as much. But like I was saying, these guys, those four in particular, and maybe one or two outside of that, they are making that division exciting. Because they're exciting guys to watch. They're technically, like I said, Moreno's really, really good, and Rival is just such an explosive, unpredictable guy. They're really good, and you could see between those three, obviously we get to the main event later, but with Figueiredo being the champ, and then you've got obviously Rival, Moreno, Perez, those three could be, chopping and changing for who challenges or who eventually wins it. It's one of those divisions that the belt could move around a bit. I still see Figueiredo as being maybe a little bit better than the other guys, but yeah, we'll get to that bit later. But good to see that they're making it exciting again, and that was a really good fight. It's a shame what happened to Rival with his shoulder, but Moreno earned that win and deserved that win. So yeah, really, really good fight, and like I said, for me anyway, it makes the flyweights a lot more exciting again. You're going to want to watch these guys go at it. And moving on to the main card. So we got Mauricio Shogun Rua versus Paul Craig. I'm probably going to rant a bit on this again, because you got Rua, who again, an older guy fighting for a long time. There's a lot of things to take away from this fight. Was obviously the fight finished via TKO, but Shogun tapped the strikes. So before I kind of get on a rant or whatever and start giving out, I've seen some people kind of saying, that shows he's finished tapping the strikes, and Shogun wouldn't do that. I think it's a little bit harsh, because if you see the fight, the way the fight finishes, Paul Craig is known for having a heavy top game when in grappling. And when he got on top of Shogun, there was nothing for Shogun to do. He was flat, face down, flat, hips to the mat. There was no way he was getting out of it. Fair enough, he did tap the strikes, but so what? He knew there was nothing more he could do. There was absolutely nothing more he could do. And to be honest, within the next 5 seconds, Herb Dean was going to stop it anyway. So maybe this is a veteran move that people should give Shogun credit for, tapping out so he's not getting himself knocked out and not doing any more damage than he needs. He wasn't getting out. There was no way he was getting out of that. There was nothing he had to offer other than just take the loss. So people shouldn't be so harsh in saying, Shogun tapping to strikes. I know some fighters, especially in the past, would say, I think BJ Penn had said, I could be wrong on that now, but I think it was him that said, you're a bitch if you tap the strikes or something like that, which that's BJ Penn, and I'm not someone who is going to speak on things like that, but in my opinion, Shogun just did the right thing. Save yourself, especially if you're an older guy and you want to fight for the next 100 years like he does. Save yourself. But yeah, I think it's a bit harsh to criticise him there. But on the other side he's one of these guys. He's got to retire. I've ranted enough about this now in the last 3 or 4 podcasts. I know Dana White has come out and said that maybe he thinks, or I think Dana White said he hopes it's his last fight. Some people, I know you look at his record, he's won his last 3, or he drew 1 and won 2 of his last 3 before this fight, which is all well and good, but he's not going to beat anyone, any of the top guys in that division. I think he's ranked, pretty sure Shogun is just inside the top 15, as is Paul Craig. Shogun is not going to beat the top guys in that division, so why are we talking about, he's an older guy, what has he got to offer, besides offering younger guys, a chance to beat him so they can pump their name? There is some, I know some guys said, Shogun is on a bit of a run, you got to give him, you don't. it's give him a fight that he can go out on, and then hang up his gloves after. He doesn't need to hang around anymore. He was champion. What more can he do? He hasn't a notion of even getting a sniff of a shot at the title again. He won't even get near the top 5. Yeah, so it was still a good win for Paul Craig. He's quite a fun character if you listen to his interviews and stuff like that. If you can understand him, obviously he's Scottish, it's quite a strong accent, but interesting guy. He's quite funny to listen to. I loved one thing he did before he entered the cage first and waiting for Shogun to come out, and he spent the whole, however long it took for Shogun to come out, and before he came out, spent the whole time staring at exactly where Shogun would walk into the cage, and I thought it was quite cool. Anyway, so good win for Paul Craig, and as I was saying, he's quite interesting to listen to. He's a big guy. Even when you look for that division, he just is his frame is huge, quite a scary looking guy to look at. And he's like known for his grappling. He's really good. Be nice to see if his striking gets a bit better, which he did use in this fight, to be fair. Whether he's good enough to challenge much higher than him, I don't know. Considering he did win this fight, but drew in the last fight against Shogun. But nevertheless, he won. It's a good win for him. But yeah, there's some things about him that are quite marketable in my opinion, if you can understand them. Obviously I can, I can pick up kind of the Scottish accent pretty easy, considering my own accent isn't the easiest to understand if you're not Irish. But he is an interesting character and quite fun. But again, on to Shogun, please retire. That's enough, that's all I'd say. On a little side note, actually, I was just thinking, after all my rants last week and stuff like that, I'm hoping it was because Dana White was listening to me, but Anderson Silva has been released from the UFC, which is good and bad. Good thing being hopefully he doesn't fight anymore. The bad thing is I think he's going to fight. You're going to have the buzzards now circling around him trying to squeeze the last drop out, so you'll have like your bare knuckle FC. I don't know if Bellator or One Championship are going to go near him. You never know. But hopefully that's the end of him, and hopefully he did retire after his last fight. But I was happy to hear it, as it's kind of sad in a way that he got released, but it's what needs to be done. It's one of these guys that's probably going to continue, even if Dana White gives him one last fight to win and retire on a high, then if he loses he'll probably want one more, so the best thing for him, and hopefully he just goes and retires now and the buzzards leave him alone. But best of luck to him in whatever he does. But no doubt he'll always have some sort of, go down the coaching route. I'd imagine he would be a very good coach, striking coach especially. But yeah, that's the side note. So moving on to the fight card. Next fight was women's flyweight. Caitlin Chukagian versus Cynthia Calvillo. This was a pretty good fight. Both obviously in Shevchenko's division as well, which is good. I like that the UFC put on a couple of other fights to maybe see, I don't know if you want to say it's their next challenger, but kind of helps give an idea. But Chukagian looked really good in this fight. Really, really good. Using her jab in particular was just super technical, super stiff jab the whole time, constantly moving footwork side to side. She was really good. She won it, I'm going to say one-sidedly, but she was pretty on top throughout the entire fight. Calvillo kind of later in the third, I think, later in the fight, started to kind of come into it a bit, landing some shots. But Chukagian, especially her jab and her 1-2, was really, really nice to watch, really crisp. And it was so cool. Again, I don't know if I spoke about this before, but Mark Henry, who was her coach, for anyone that hasn't listened to him before, but especially now with no crowds in the UFC, the way Mark Henry works, and it was noticed especially when with his coaching of Frankie Edgar, Mark Henry uses codes. So rather than your usual, calling for a 1-2 or a takedown or whatever it may be, he uses code words. It can be anything, but they say that for every fight he changes them, so the other coaches or no one else can pick up on what he's asking for. and his fighters never give it away either. But it's really cool. I think one of the ones they picked up on was Pinot. I think like the name of a wine, something like that. And even like when she came back, in between rounds when he's talking to her, he calls her, Pinot or a this or that, and you never understand what the hell he's talking about. But really cool. Like that takes a lot of work, and there must be a lot of trust and understanding between him and his fighters to have a completely new language. And especially with no crowds, and you hear him calling it out, and it's really cool to hear. And such a good coach. Mark Henry is another one of these, one of the top level coaches in the UFC. But never gives away what the words are, what they mean. And I know one of the things he does is, for the fighters in particular, I think he will call out like names of their family for certain strikes or whatever, so it's easier obviously to cater to them. But again, the outside world would not have a clue, and especially the opponents or the opponents' coaches, which is a pretty cool strategy. It's something you see other coaches do that, where they might change, the numbers. Obviously your 1-2 is your, jab cross, but you see them change numbers, but which can be picked up on if you're smart enough. But to completely change it that way, it's cool. It's such a cool thing to do. And again, the trust between him and his fighters must be huge, and the understanding especially, because everything that he called, you could tell she was implementing it. And I have no idea what it was, but you could see the instructions, whether it was footwork or changing a strike or whatever it may be. You could see her changing as he called it, and great performance. Again, that's the division ruled by Valentina Shevchenko, so it's Chikagian obviously was already beaten by Shevchenko, but good win for her, good step up towards the top again. She may eventually challenge again. She looked really good, to be fair, like really, really good. The only thing I will say is Calvillo did not look like she was in the same, like she came up in weight class, and Chikagian did look a lot bigger. Her frame was bigger, she was much taller, but to be fair, Chikagian is tall anyway for that division. But you gotta take that into consideration. But no, really good win, and it was actually really enjoyable to watch, especially her jab and her striking. So yeah, really good win, and hats off to her and Mark Henry. It's absolutely mad. The next time, if it's for her, Frankie Edgar, I'm not sure who else fights out of that camp. I can't think of them at the moment, but until the crowds come back, if you're watching those fights, try and listen to Mark Henry's calls, or maybe listen to when the camera picks him up in the corner. It's pretty insane to hear the different calls he has, and like I said, very cool. Anyway, moving on to another fight I'd picked to possibly be the best fight of the night, and this one probably the best fight of the night, one of the best, if not the best. But Mike Perry versus Tim Means. Getting a lot of talking points around this fight as well, mainly on Mike Perry's side. Now, those don't know, Mike Perry missed weight. I think it was by 4.5 or 5 pounds, which is a lot to miss weight by. Especially when, he'd been all week, he'd been putting up. You see, even in an interview during the week, I'd watched it, where he was talking about how, he eats what he wants, and he makes weight. And I like Mike Perry. He's an interesting character, and he's very fun. Like, even if you see, which was actually quite hilarious, he walked out to Beyonce's song Halo. I think it's Beyonce. And as he's walking out, the song starts playing, and he reacts. He literally says, "What the fuck?" So obviously he didn't pick that song. I don't know, was it his girlfriend who was in his corner, or whatever. But then, as he's walking in, he starts to sing the song, and he came out second, so he kind of walks up to Tim Means and starts singing it out loud to his face. And these are the things that make Mike Perry interesting and funny, but at the same time, he's kind of taken the lackadaisy approach. He's taken it to a new level lately with the not picking a proper corner, having his girlfriend and his friend who has no MMA experience in the corner. It's kind of gone beyond the funny to almost stupid. Like, yeah, I know he was doing interesting things where he was trying to auction off a place in his corner for fans and stuff like that, which Dana went against. That's all well and good, you know. Like the last time he had his girlfriend in the corner, he won. I think it was against Mickey, fucking what's his name? Mickey Gall. It's against Mickey Gall. Yeah, he won that fight. I think it was his last fight, and that was good. And he came out saying, "Oh, I don't need a corner," and that's all well and good when you win, when you make weight. When you miss weight by, I said, 5 pounds, you don't win against a guy who's ranked lower than you. You know, Tim Means was really good in this fight. I'll get to him in a minute, but Perry is usually ranked a lot higher than Tim Means, and he's supposed to be one of those guys who's there or thereabouts, sometimes looking like he could challenge for the title. In Perry, I mean. But like I said, when he's gone out losing to guys ranked lower than him, guys who have been around a long time, you got to wonder with Dana White, is Perry too much or more hassle than he's worth, you know? He's always had that funny attitude, and that in his fights, like, he always puts up a good fight, there's no doubt about that. But I mean, you gotta show like you give a shit, you know. What's the point in being there if you're going to be putting people with no experience in your corner and then missing weight? It's just, you gotta care some bit, you know. At the end of the day, it's fighting. It's not, you know. It's like to say that you don't play MMA. So yeah, it's just it's pretty. It's a little irritating, really, when you look at it. It goes beyond funny. Like, Mike Perry is one of these guys who kind of irritates you, where he's really funny, really entertaining, and then you kind of wonder his decisions are a little too lackadaisy or too kind of, I don't give a shit. But yeah, like if you look, I mean, think of Ronda Rousey's coach, the names are not coming to me at all today. Ronda Rousey's coach for years, Edmund Taverdian, who got a lot of stick, and you know, there's a lot of talk about him because people said he was not. And I do agree with it. I don't think he's a great coach. I think he's got a terrible attitude. You know, I know he's kind of come back on the scene now with Edmund Shabazian. But one of the examples why I don't think Taverdian is a great coach is, you see the change in Travis Brown. And Travis Brown went from Jackson Wing to Taverdian's camp, Glendale MMA, I believe they're called. You see the change and some of the calls that he has made in Rousey's corner in the past, and how he tried to make Rousey into a striker. These kind of things, and I never liked his attitude because he was always one of these coaches who had to get a few words in or had to be shouting abuse from the corner, which, in my opinion, it's not a good coach. It's just my opinion on him. But the point I'm making is Taverdian has shit tons of MMA coaching experience. Did coach a lot of good fighters. You know, he still did, regardless of what I say. He coached Ronda Rousey to a title and to a lot of title defences, record title defences. But he gets stick as a coach. And then you got Mike Perry, who's putting his pregnant girlfriend and some friend who has no idea, and you know he has no idea when you listen to some of the calls he made in between fights. And this is coming from me. I mean, the experience I have through watching MMA and one fucking amateur fight, that's it. But if I pick up on these things, you know, it's just silly. He's treating it as too much of a gimmick. Like some of the calls, obviously these kind of things you're gonna listen to the corner a bit more. It's gonna highlight them. You're gonna want to hear them. But a lot of it was like, you know, come on, let's go, do this. This is the height of the coaching he's getting from the corner. And one, I believe it was his friend that said, one thing was, you know, keep your back off the cage and put him on the cage. That's it. That's the height of the cornering he was getting throughout that fight. And you know, maybe Mike Perry is one of these guys who doesn't need it, or like he says he doesn't need it, but clearly he does. You know, he has some shit outside the fighting where he's gotten in trouble a little bit, some controversy, the missing weight, these things. You know, clearly he does need someone good in his corner. It's in fact the opposite. He should be looking for a proper good coach, and there's plenty of them out there that he could get. Anyway, outside of all that ranting, yeah, I don't know. I have a feeling Mike Perry is one of these guys you're going to see at Bare Knuckle FC pretty soon, unless he changes his attitude. Get a proper coach in. You know, I don't care who you are. You need someone in your corner that you can rely on. You know, all the best. You look at John Jones and all the mad shit he does, but he still has a great corner team, probably one of the best, if not the best in the game. Brandon Gibson is I think one of the most underrated coaches out there. He's kind of behind the scenes of a lot of the Jackson Wink training team. But anyway, yeah, just hopefully Mike Perry gets his shit together, because he is an exciting guy, fun guy, good fighter. He is a good fighter. There's no doubt about that. And in this fight, he showed that too. But just to miss some weight and all that, it's really disrespectful. Especially think of guys like Tim Means has been doing it for a long time, and shows up on weight when he has to. But to go on to Tim Means after I do all the ranting on Perry, actually went out of the whole fight card. This is one of my favourite performances, was Tim Means' performance. And again, I'm not trying to take anything away from him, I'm just speaking on Perry alone. But Tim Means' technically striking in this fight was really, really nice to watch. As you know, Mike Perry is the guy who will swing for the fences and he will try and take your head off, and it works for him, and he's dangerous in that way. Tim Means just kept touching him with jabs and 1-2s and jabs, and at one point I think he landed 4 jabs in a row, just real quick, real light, but in your face, constantly moving. Like a lot of Tim Means, another one of these guys whose fights are always pretty exciting because he can take a shot and he will go to war with you. But this was really nice. It was Diaz-esque the way he was striking, just this in your face, peppering you with light shots constantly, and not there when you're trying to hit him. There's a couple of times where Perry swung and Tim Means was underneath him out the back door before Perry even realised where he was. It was a really good performance. Now again, Tim Means is not going to go on to win the welterweight title, by no means. Get it? But he's not. But a really good performance. You can't take that away from him. And I was hearing on another podcast that he's supposedly a super professional guy for as long as he's been in the game. I don't think any fighters have a bad word to say about him. But really good. I rewatched that fight a second time. It was really nice to watch his strike, and one thing I did like was first and second round he was, like I said, Diaz-esque, kind of like the Diaz brothers, really light, in your face, or hitting you to the body, tapping you to the head, but constantly tapping you, hitting you with something. And then in the third round he turned up the power. Same thing, but just adding a little more sting to his shots, and it was again really nice to watch. And he did start to bust open Perry quite a bit, mark up his face and cut him open a bit, just impacting on all the scar tissue that Perry has. It wasn't an ass whooping, like it wasn't a totally one-sided fight, but Means was on top in each round pretty much. There was one point I believe at the end, midway through the third or towards the end of the second, where the two of them just exchanged in the middle, and it was kind of pretty much what a Mike Perry Tim Means fight advertises. The two of them just swung. But I don't know, Means was better throughout that entire fight. Really, really good performance, really nice performance, and credit to him. I don't want to take anything away because the way Perry has acted, but think of it, Perry, having missed weight, must have been quite a bit heavier than Tim Means, or at least didn't have to suffer a hell of a weight cut. Again, great result and credit to him. It's a shame that you're going to have more talk about Mike Perry than you will about Tim Means now after this fight. He just needs to stop with the eating cheeseburgers and sending pictures to his opponents. Just get your fucking conditioning right, get your coaching front right. Leave your pregnant girlfriend at home and your friend who hasn't a clue about fucking MMA. Okay, so that rant over. Moving on to the co-main event. Valentina Shevchenko versus Jennifer Maia. A lot of interesting points in this fight too. Obviously, Shevchenko's a heavy favourite going into this fight, rightfully so. But it's funny to see, the betting odds, the way betting is done in America is much different to what I would do back home or even here. The odds I never understand, but I know she was a heavy favourite. Something like you had to bet like $2,000 on her to get $100 or something like that. It was, I don't know, it was weird, but yeah, something mad like that. But don't quote me on this now because I'm not super in tune with the way betting is done in America. But these were the Vegas odds anyway. It was pretty crazy. And then Maya, who looked okay, you know, she looked strong against Shevchenko. She, you know, didn't back down. She wasn't getting her ass whooped as quick as other women were in previous fights. Especially the second round, where I believe that was the round where Shevchenko made a mistake in trying to take Maya down, and Maya ended up on top, and she just kind of controlled Shevchenko. There's a lot of hype around, you know, some silly people now thinking, oh, maybe Shevchenko's not as good as she is. I mean, she won this fight she won obviously by unanimous decision. I believe it was 4 rounds to 1, or maybe 3 to 2, but it was 4 to 1, I believe. But she won, clearly won. You know, she was far better, used a lot of her grappling. Albeit Maya it's basically that she just didn't get an ass whooping as quick as all the others, but it was a one-sided winning for Shevchenko. And even so, I know some commentators say maybe Maya has now given a bit of a blueprint on how to beat Shevchenko. I didn't see it. I saw her doing well, for especially the second round, but she didn't. I mean, there wasn't a mark on Shevchenko's face. She didn't land any strikes. She just looked strong. Maya looked a little stronger than her in the clinch up against the cage. That's where she looked good. But didn't do much other than control her and hold her and try and make Shevchenko tired, which didn't work. Albeit maybe that is the way to try and do it, to get her up against the cage, to wear on her. But every time the fight went the same all the time. Was Maya would end up against the cage, Maya would win that exchange, but Shevchenko would take her down after Maya initiated the clinch up against the cage. And even her corner, Maya's corner, who was a big fucking bodybuilder dude whose surname is Monster. Don't know him, but anyway. He kept calling for you initiate the takedown, you take her down first, don't let her take you down. And it never happened. She would initiate the clinch. You know, and the only time she ended up on top was when Shevchenko made a mistake in one of her takedowns in round 2. I believe that was the only time. If I'm wrong, forgive me, but Shevchenko was still outclassed her. She was still better. Maya did land some strikes, but Shevchenko was out. You know, got surgery on a knee before all of this. I think it's like trying to find, you know, those little things. For me, Shevchenko won it clearly. She was much better. Maya gave a good account of herself, definitely, but she wasn't troubled really. Give me a second through my notes. Yeah, she did. Yeah, she gave a good account of herself. She looked strong. She definitely did look strong, and she probably will be there or thereabouts again. You know, she took some heavy shots. She was able to take a shot. She was able to give a shot, which she did. Like I said, she landed a couple on Shevchenko, but never dropped her, never rocked her, didn't really mark her. So I think it's just people getting ahead of themselves because Shevchenko didn't completely finish her, didn't completely dominate her as much as she has done previous women. But again, this is going to happen. It's happening with all the great champions. It happened with Amanda Nunes against Germaine de Randamie. You know, still won the fight clearly in her grappling. But, you know, people had little questions about, oh, maybe she's human. I still see Shevchenko going on to, you know, probably retire with that belt. Good performance again, in my opinion, you know. Credit to Maya. Can't take it away, but it's just funny how the betting odds were dropping so quick as soon as Shevchenko lost the round. But in my opinion, that's where champions really show why they're champions, is when things aren't 100% going their way and they still pull out the wins. You know, John Jones, for example, you know, whether you like him or not, in a lot of the fights where it hasn't gone his way at all, he still pulls out these wins. You know, people can argue that he maybe didn't win those fights, but you can't comfortably say that he definitely lost them either. And this wasn't even the case here. She wasn't losing at any point, maybe lost one round. That was it. She still went on to win the fight. So yeah, like, I don't want to take it away from Maya, because credit to her, she did, as I said, give a really good account for herself. But no difference. Shevchenko's the champ, and you know, there was at no point did it look like that was going to change. But she also showed her grappling. You know, there was a lot of takedowns for her. Looked really strong in her grappling. Now, to be fair though, she didn't dominate on the round. It was more just controlling, but she controlled her. Even with some of her shots, Maya managed to neutralise, her doing any damage to her, to Shevchenko doing any damage while she had her on the round. So, yeah, not the most exciting fight, which is the other thing. But good win for Shevchenko, and she remains the champ. But people just, got to remember, it's coming back from injury, coming back from surgery, and still holding on to the belt, a clear winner. I don't know if you should get ready to kind of be calling for her head just yet. But she is, I think she's 32 now. I don't know if there's a lot more defences in her, unless the UFC are willing to try to build up some super fight. I know people talk about Nunes again, but Nunes has beaten her twice. Whereas, I don't see a lot in that. They are saying that probably her next challenger will be Jessica Andrade, which makes for a pretty exciting fight, because Andrade will come forward and is super heavy-handed, and I believe she's even more stronger than what Maya is. But I don't know, do I see her as an actual, the one that could dethrone Shevchenko? But we'll see. You never know. Take away from the fight is both Shevchenko's sisters are definitely working on the grappling, which is quite scary. That's going to add that to their game as well. But yeah, fun. Well, not the most exciting fight, but people definitely need to relax on how well Maya did, I think. Anyway, moving on to the main event. This one kind of, I was a little pissed off in the sense of I wish it went a little longer, because it looked like, even for how long did it last? Finished early in round one. I think it was only like a minute or so in. Just barely 2 minutes into the round. Figueiredo getting the guillotine choke. Good finish for Figueiredo. There's no questions about it. He did well, and it was a pretty tight choke considering Perez almost had his head out and he still managed to choke him. But I just wish he went on a bit longer, because Alex Perez looked like he was up for this fight. He looked like he wanted it, and he showed no fear. Joe Rogan said in the commentary that in the weigh-in, the face-offs, you see that Perez looked completely, there was no emotion in his face. He didn't show any fear. He looked dead behind the eyes. He showed no fear whatsoever. He was up for this fight. And Figueiredo, walked up with his sunglasses on and then took them off, trying to, kind of like McGregor style, trying to get a reaction out of him, and he didn't get it. So like I said, he looked like 100% he was up for this fight, and he did show as much as you can in 2 minutes. But I just wish it went a bit longer, because it was going to make for a super exciting fight, I believe. But no, credit to Davis and Figueiredo. He got a really good choke. Looks like he could be a pretty dominant champion over the next while, with some good challengers, but he just looks to have a little bit more than what these guys have. But I'm excited as well to see, I mentioned him earlier, I want to see some more Alex Perez fights, because he just looked like he was not fazed by this challenge, and he was willing to really go for it. Figueiredo caught him with a choke as he was taking him down, but it wasn't like it was a stupid mistake. It was more Figueiredo's know-how and kind of setting a trap, but not so much. He just caught him. That's all it was. There was no major mistakes there or anything like that. One thing I took from the fight, as I said, as much as you can take in 2 minutes, but one thing Perez did, he threw a super fast double kick, like one to the calf and one to the body, and you could hear it, but it was so fast. It was like, again, I just wish the fight went on a lot longer, because I think it would have made for a super exciting fight for both guys. But Figueiredo does look, he's a bad motherfucker, as they say. Heavy-handed, powerful, especially for a flyweight, which is what that division needed, and it needs is guys that can knock you out, because then it attracts more people to watch it, and it's good for the fighters. But yeah, with guys like Perez, Moreno, Rival, but the flyweight division is, mainly because of those guys, it is a lot more exciting. I think between those four, you're going to see a lot of exciting fights coming up in the future. Moreno has already gotten his title shot. They're going to give it to him. I think it's December. It's only in like 3 weeks' time. December. It's the December 12th card or the one after that. Yeah, the UFC pretty much made that fight straight after this card, which you rarely see them do. But yeah, I think they said I think Figueiredo might break a record if he wins this fight in terms of first flyweight, I think, to win 2 main events, or to host 2 main events, something like that, to headline 2 main events, within such a short period of time, or within the same year or something like that. But anyway, yeah, Figueiredo looks to me like it's going to take a lot to beat him. I would like to see Moreno do it, because he's one of my favourite guys in that division, just because he's a fun guy. He's technically very good, but his fights are exciting at the same time. But as is Figueiredo, and Figueiredo's got heavier hands. But yeah, that division is kind of going to have more eyes on it lately, I think, and rightly so, because it's a long time needing that, considering the UFC at one point were thinking of scrapping that division when Henry Cejudo supposedly saved it. But yeah, so my only dispute with that fight is I just wish it went a bit longer. But I think you will see Perez get another shot. Maybe he'll go and fight Rival next, and you get a challenger, all of that again. I don't know. There's some other guys there in the division too. Obviously Cody Garbrandt, which I've mentioned before, is still talking about wanting to come down and take that shot. But I had heard on another podcast that supposedly Garbrandt is suffering, he's having a bad dose of COVID. If you can have, just suppose his symptoms are quite bad, he's still pretty sick from it, so hopefully he recovers. But you can only look at the guys that are in the division right now, and that's, for me, those 4 super exciting. And there is fighters outside of that who could do well too. But just good for the flyweight division. I'm glad to see it, and good for Figueiredo. It was a good win. He has earned that, and he deserves it. And I think Perez, even in those 2 minutes, made a bit of a name for himself too. Gave a good account for himself, a bit like Jennifer Maya earlier. But yeah, just didn't look phased, which was cool to see. He didn't look phased at all by getting a shot at the champ, and yeah, be tough out for the next guy, whoever it is. Yeah, so that's the end of that card. Moving on to my shoulder. Moving on to next week's card. Yeah, it's small card, pretty small. Couple of exciting fights on it, but not I'm going to blow your hair back. Looking at the prelims, Ashley Evans-Smith versus Norma Dumont. There's not a whole lot on it. Rachel Ostovich, probably one of the other big names. That's the prelim card. Then the main card, you have got Spike Carlisle, Bill Algeo, Josh Parisian. The co-main and the main event are good fights. You got Anthony Smith versus Devin Clark, which is pretty good. Anthony Smith is super in need of a win, and a good win at that. Devin Clark, not an easy fight, but I'd like to see Smith take that one. He needs a win badly. Then in the main event, you've got Curtis Blades versus Derek Lewis, which is guys with some heavy hands, but obviously Curtis Blades with his wrestling, that's going to pose a big threat for Derek Lewis. But yeah, pretty small card next week, but nevertheless worth the watch, especially for those two cards at the end, 2 fights at the end. But yeah, that's it for this week's podcast. Again, apologies for how late the last one went up, but we're going to keep improving. Like I said to you, just stick with us. Yeah, please keep liking and sharing. I promise you I'll be getting more content out and stuff like that. Just keep liking the page and following the page, and we will have more stuff up soon, starting this week, I promise. But thanks for tuning in and all that, and hit me up with any questions or any suggestions or anything like that. I appreciate it. Yeah, have a good day. Take care, guys. Thank you.